Professional gardeners are increasingly advising us to leave our seed heads over winter, and there are 3 reasons for that. Firstly, it's very good for wildlife. Birds feed on the seeds and insects shelter in the stems and the collapsing foliage. Secondly, it is beautiful. I know it's not as beautiful as a garden in full flower, there's no doubt about that, but it has its own rather austere and ghostly beauty, especially in low light or perhaps in the frost. And thirdly, it's less work. You will probably want to clear away eventually in early spring, but by that time quite a lot of the material will have rotted down and it will have collapsed and it will have started working its way into the soil, improving the soil structure and increasing your fertility. It's Alexandra here from the Middle-Sized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and last winter we left this main border here completely during winter and we didn't clear it away until early spring, and there's no doubt it looked messy, but actually it was a rather beautiful natural mess. Well, obviously there are pros and cons to everything. And the one problem with leaving your seed heads over winter is you will get more self-seeders. Now, personally, I love self-seeders. You have to pull them out if they get too vigorous, but actually it's easier to pull a tiny plant out than it is to go all the way to the garden centre, buy new plants and plant them. So I love self-seeders. But there is a small percentage of self-seeders that could be invasive if they escape into your countryside, your moorland, your seaside, other open spaces. If it then takes over and outcompetes the natural local foliage, that can affect local wildlife. Now, different plants are invasive in different places, so go online, but don't take the AI general search that you get at the top of the search results, because those come from lots and lots of different sites. Some of them are scientific, some are not. Go to a named site like the Botanic Gardens, the universities, the government websites, or the big organisations like the RHS, because otherwise you won't get reliable advice on what's invasive in your part of the world. So I'm just coming round here to what used to be the vegetable patch and where we've now grown wildflowers, because there are some absolutely beautiful teasels, which I think have to be one of the best seed heads that you can get. Teasels are excellent for pollinators and birds, but they are invasive in some parts of the world, so before you plant teasels, do check. Another thing to think about if you're worried about invasiveness is that some plants have invasive varieties and non-invasive varieties, and one of these is Acanthus mollis, which I think if anyone's ever had it in their garden they know it's almost impossible to get rid of. But I have got a variety which has pure white flowers. It's called Rue Ledan. It makes beautiful seed heads and it stayed exactly where I planted it. It's grown into slightly larger clumps, that's all. Alliums can make fantastic seed heads. I have to say that most of my alliums have collapsed by now. But Allium Christophii, which has big star-like seed heads, is absolutely gorgeous. In fact, people often spray them gold for Christmas decorations. So a few of those are still in my border, and I'm certainly not pulling them out. I think one of the most distinctive plants when we think about seed heads is Eryngium, or sea holly, and I absolutely love it, but I have to say I have trouble growing it in this garden. It's very drought resilient, it loves our dry summers, but we do also have wet winters, and it doesn't like that, so it tends not to come back. But if you've got slightly drier soil in winter than I have, I think Eryngium, sea holly, brilliant for seed heads. For me, one of the top self-seeders in this garden is Foxgloves. I've never planted them. I always just let them self-seed, and they're incredibly good about planting themselves where they look best. Foxgloves have good upright seed heads. Quite a lot have collapsed by the time you get to the autumn, but there are still a few around. Hydrangeas are a plant that I think we've all got in our gardens. I know in the United States you particularly love hydrangeas, and actually I love hydrangeas too, and they have great big seed heads. Not all of them stay throughout the winter, a few of them just sort of seem to fall apart, but they look fabulous in frost. Hydrangeas, unlike a lot of other seed heads, don't really have much wildlife benefits, but I think we can have a few plants in our gardens just because we like them. There are a few plants in my garden that I would definitely have weeded out, say 5 or 10 years ago, and one of those is purple toadflax. It is technically a weed, but actually I really like it, and although it does spread, it's not incredibly spreading in my garden. So I think purple toadflax, yep, great for colour, great for pollinators, great for seed heads. Technically a weed. When people think about brilliant seed heads, honesty or silver dollar must be pretty near the top of the list. It's got these lovely sort of like paper discs, and they just glitter in the light. I think it's beautiful. Of course, some plants that are good to seed heads are perennials and some are annuals. And I think one of my favourite annuals is Nigella, which has these beautiful little spiky seed heads. It's a very small plant, but it is really pretty. And where would an autumn garden be without the seed heads of ornamental grasses? I've got a video on 7 top ornamental grasses for your garden, and I'll put that in the description below. But I have to say that grasses just give that movement, that texture, that airiness. I pulled out some of my grasses this year and I've really missed them. Some plants that spread well actually aren't invasive. It's almost contradictory. But Phlomis russeliana, or Jerusalem sage, is one that I literally had one little tiny bit of root given to me by a friend. It's now spread all over the most difficult corner of the garden, which is very dry because it's under trees, it's by a wall, it's dry, it's shady. And the Phlomis is incredibly happy there. And it looks great with its seed heads. And I've looked up, and I can't see that Phlomis russeliana is invasive anywhere. I may be wrong, maybe check, but nevertheless, I think it's a good one to think about. And then, of course, there's the good old poppy. And I think I like the seed heads of poppy more than the flower even. Of course, the flower is brilliant for bees. It's so good. And the seed heads are great for birds. So definitely there's room, I think, in every garden for poppies. And of course, if they pop up where you don't want them, you just pull them out. They're very easy to pull out. Now, don't forget that rose hips are also seed heads, and not all roses do have good hips. But when you're buying roses, particularly from a rose specialist, you can actually choose roses for their hips. The best rose hips in my garden come from the plants that are the closest to the wild species. For example, I have a Rosa glauca here, which actually self-seeded itself from across the other side of the garden. And it has wonderful rose hips. And there's also a very old rose in my front garden, which has been here apparently for about 100 years, and that has lovely rose hips. Rose hips, of course, hugely beneficial to wildlife, as well as looking beautiful. I think when we think of plant seeds, probably sunflowers must be one of the obvious ones, and they have incredibly sort of structural seed heads. However, sunflowers are another where you do need to check invasiveness where you are. Verbascum. Now, this all started with my Verbascum. These Verbascum, which I find absolutely lovely, they're great like candelabra. They divide the lower lawn from the upper lawn. I'm absolutely thrilled with them. I didn't plant them. They're self-seeded. I don't know where they came from. And the flowers are yellow flowers, and they've been growing all through the summer. And now they have these seed heads. And I found myself with a pair of secateurs thinking, I need to chop these down. I wonder when is the best time. And I suddenly thought, no, I will leave them over the winter because their sculptural quality is what I really like about them. And then I turned round and I saw some more of the Verbascums had lovely little birds literally taking the seeds out of the tall columns. So the Verbascums are going to stay here until early spring. Almost at the other end of the spectrum are Verbena bonariensis, which are probably a garden designer's favourite plant at the moment. And they have long, very, very thin stems and then little purple flowers on the top, which is why they're also called purple top. Verbena bonariensis do tend to flop over. So you will find them kind of flopping everywhere because those long, thin stems can't hold the seed heads. But the birds absolutely adore them. And a friend of mine said she once saw a little mouse crawling up the stems, a little tiny field mouse, and then taking the seeds from the top. It was very sweet. Verbena bonariensis can seed around if you've got sort of dry, gravelly soil. It seeds around okay in my garden because I've got clay. I personally am very happy to see as much of it as wants to seed here. And then there's Veronicastrum, also known as Culver's root. Veronicastrum is one of those plants that the flowers can get distorted, and so you get something, it's called fasciated, and so it can be a bit strange and a bit odd. But apparently all you do is pinch the fasciated flowers off. I only found that out when I was doing a bit of research recently, so I haven't been doing that, and I will try that for the future. But I think it does make good seed heads. People who grow plants for a living are at the forefront of new technologies in how plants are grown and what we do in our gardens. So don't miss this video coming up next, where Steve Edney and Lou Dowell show with their plant nursery, No Name Nursery, what they do to their beautiful big herbaceous border in the autumn to make sure that it's beautiful in the summer. So that's coming up next with this video. Don't miss it, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.